So I was reading about this thing called bear hunting, where when kids are social distancing and they're going for a walk, you're supposed to put stuffed bears out in your window so that they can enjoy seeing the bears, I guess. So we took my boss's bears and put them in my window. And if this video looks very furry, that's because my phone is propped on the bears. I'm not sure I'm gonna keep them there actually. Oh, that's terrible. This whole video is just gonna be about how I'm feeling like extremely irritated and negative toward other people for like no real reason. I will put the bears out. I want people to enjoy the bears. Maybe I'll put my other stuffed animals in the windows too, but I'm just very crabby. I don't feel like this is necessarily anyone's fault, but I'm just going to vent my feelings anyway. Um, so I guess the thing that I'm particularly frustrated about is that the mayor and governor and mayors in Bay Area counties, aside from San Francisco, have been really cracking down on what they see as people having too much fun outside, or there being too many people at like popular parks and hiking places, and they're trying to increasingly keep people from doing that. And I guess I just find it extremely annoying. I feel like maybe in a few months or whenever this is all over, I will like look back on myself now and think that I was being a whiny asshole and that like I wasn't taking social distancing seriously. But like, of course, I support social distancing, and I was happy when we got the shelter in place order, and I'm glad that we were doing it first. But like, I guess I just don't understand what people are supposed to do for fun or outdoor time if they're not allowed to go to parks or places outside. And, like, I mean, first of all, I don't think we've done anything, I mean, personally, in going to parks that was like against the rules. But even when I've seen like the pictures of like parks where supposedly too many people were hanging out, it like looks like the people are keeping their distance and are like in small groups or family groups. It looked like people couldn't do any of the things people normally do for fun, and everyone was stressed, so everyone went to the beach or something, and there were a lot of people there. Um, Anyway, the reason I'm frustrated about this is because they're increasingly making strict rules where they're closing some of the parks, and they're also, like in San Mateo County, the county south of San Francisco, they have closed all of the parks now, I think. And in San Francisco, they've closed the parking lots of a lot of parks. Like, I guess their feeling is that if you live close enough to the park to walk, it's okay to go there, but otherwise, you should walk to the park that's closest to you. You shouldn't, like they don't want everyone in the city to all be traveling to like the most popular park so that it will be crowded. And I guess I'm a little frustrated by the lack of consideration for people with mobility issues, like my boss. Like, there are a lot of small neighborhood parks in San Francisco, and like there's many near her house that I'm able to access on foot, but she's not able to access them. And like, I'm increasingly worried that as the rules become more strict, and she's, I think, quite depressed and bored because of this confusing situation where like all of her social activities have been taken away, and all of the things that she does for fun have mostly been taken away. And as someone with a disability who can't really use the internet by herself and can't read or write, and whose friends often can't do that either, she doesn't have the contact with her friends that a lot of people are still able to have. And like, it's really, it sucks, and she's not able to go. I'm worried that increasingly she won't even be able to go to the park or enjoy the outdoors because she can't walk to any parks because they're just too far for her to walk to. And like, because the neighborhood she lives in is very hilly, it would be fairly hard for me to push her there in her wheelchair. It would be really steep. I mean, I might try to do it, but I guess I'm just really frustrated by what I see as local government being extremely strict about something that most people aren't even doing, and that it seems like most people that are doing it are like social distancing fairly well. I guess I just, maybe I don't understand the scope of the problem. I guess it's true that like everybody that is staying at home and social distancing is going to be like, well, everyone I know is social distancing and I don't see people having like barbecues in the park or whatever. And maybe that's actually going on. But I guess I just feel like we've already made so many big changes to our lives, which hopefully will have like a big health impact, that I don't really understand why the focus has to be on like punishing and like criminalizing like behavior that isn't following the rules perfectly, or like situations that I honestly think just are understandable, like a lot of people going to the same park because it's a popular park. Um, I'm just frustrated about it. And like I'm saying, maybe I'm being totally unfair. It's just like for example, yesterday somebody, and I don't know whether this is like a city employee, which like wow, like great priorities if so, or just a random person, but somebody came and they had like printed out the sheet of like all of the instructions for the shelter in place order, like what you're allowed and not allowed to do, and they took it and they like taped it to everybody's house, like they taped a copy of it to everyone's house, like in case you couldn't walk over to someone else's house and read it, you have one on your own house. And it's like, don't touch people's houses and attach things to their house. And like in San Francisco, a lot of houses don't have any rooms on the first floor, they just have a garage on the first floor. So there's lots of houses where the steps are like, I mean, where the front door is like one or two flights of stairs up from the street. So the person actually went up all of the stairs all the way to people's front doors, which is very far back from the street, and like taped the sign on their door. Like, do they think that we don't know that we're sheltering in place? And like the sign is like, restaurants and bars and clubs are closed. And it's like, really? You don't think people can like not tell that from the fact that they're all closed? And it's like, oh, and you have to stay 6 feet away from people, as if like every time that you go to the store, they don't make you stand 6 feet away from people, and as if like every time you go to a park or anywhere, there aren't like a ton of signs saying that you should stay 6 feet away from people. I accidentally hit the pillows that all the bears were on, so the camera started to shake. Um, yeah, I feel like okay, I feel a little bit better because I see a German Shepherd going by. Positive. Um, yeah, I guess I just feel frustrated. I think like it's always it's always frustrating when the people who are supposed to be responsible, um, well, first of all, it's always frustrating when, first of all, even if it isn't anybody's fault, when you have to be responsible and do a lot of stuff to fix a problem that isn't your fault. But it's also frustrating when like the president and others could have addressed this problem and fixed it earlier, and instead other people have to be responsible. And like I'm happy to do social distancing, but I feel somewhat frustrated at like the degree of strictness and blame that's being like directed at the average person when like we're all doing our best, we're in a highly stressful situation, and like I don't know, it's very hard to adjust to everybody suddenly being told like if you do normal things like you're killing people, and like, and I'm not in any way saying that social distancing isn't important or that it isn't true that like going out and like socializing with people as normal like will lead to mass death, but like I guess I don't understand the level of like strictness in it, I guess, because it really seems to me like people are staying in and like not doing their normal lives, and it just feels like we're constantly being like criticized and guilt tripped for not doing it like perfectly enough, and it's really hard. And like most models that I've seen are even based on like doing like moderate social distancing, or like with an assumption that like some people like maybe won't follow all the rules, or like people won't be able to follow all the rules perfectly, and that still would make a big difference. But then it's like there's this obsession with getting everyone to follow the rules perfectly. This is another video I may consider deleting because I know I'm being like a jerk, and I think that maybe I'm just not seeing the big picture, but it is very frustrating. I'm sure that's the case for everyone. It's just really hard, even if intellectually you agree with it, to not be like angry at being in this situation, especially when like you're in a situation with someone like my boss who's being really affected and can't really do a lot of the things that people are saying like you should do to cope during this time. It just feels really frustrating. Because I feel like she's being more punished by these regulations about not driving to places and stuff like that than like all the people that supposedly were out having parties on the beach or whatever. Like they can figure out other ways to do that, but like she won't be able to have even like the few opportunities to do things that she enjoyed that she's like still had. So I'm just frustrated. Yeah. My second point of frustration, which, you know, isn't something I can really blame anybody for, but it just is really frustrating, is that obviously there's no way of being sure, but there's many people in the Bay Area who feel that they had COVID-19 before it was officially recognized as being in the Bay Area. And so I have some reason to believe that like I already was exposed to it and already had it before, long before anybody was thinking about doing shelter in place here. And so I guess it's frustrating because I wish that I could know. And when people first started talking about this, first of all, like at the time that I think I had it, I wasn't aware of any of this. I didn't even know that it existed. And so like I don't know if I may have like harmed people out of not knowing about it, because I back then was just living my normal life. And also like when it first started to seem like something like this was going to happen, like people who were in the situation who thought that they already had it, at least at first, I was like, well, okay, like I'm not super worried because I think that I've already had it, so I'm not worried about catching it, having it myself, or passing it on to other people. But then increasingly, as I learned more about social distancing and stuff, and I realized how, you know, when I read the really good New York Times article with the sliding graph, a Washington Post article with the dots bouncing around, I obviously realized that like how severe the consequences are of like going around and not realizing that you have it and possibly spreading it around. So, you know, at that point it was like, wow, like I may think that I've had it, but I don't really know for sure, and I'm not going to be reckless, like, you know, towards other people's lives based on the fact that I don't know whether I've had it or not. So like from that point on, which was shortly before we got shelter in place order, of course, I've, you know, decided to act as if I haven't had it, you know, and basically we're all being told to like live as if we're positive, so I'm trying to do that. But yeah, I think what's frustrating is like not knowing that I could be doing all of this for nothing. I guess I think it's frustrating because like all this pressure is being put on us to all behave as if we're positive, but then even people who are very sick like often aren't able to access tests. And like I know there aren't enough tests now, but if there were, I feel like testing everybody would be the smartest thing to do. And like we're all supposed to be acting as if we're positive, and if there were enough tests and they were widely available, people could just know if they were positive and what they should do, or people could find out if they already had it and if they don't need to like live like this. And I guess it's just like frustrating to know that it's possibly because of a lack of resources that we have to do this, just because of a lack of tests, a lack of knowledge about what's going on. That's all. I know I'm being a jerk. I'm just really frustrated.